Do you conduct a business in the Plenty Valley or surrounding area? If so, consider Plenty Valley FM 88.6 for your business promotion. Our rates are reasonable and results positive. Call 9404 2111 during business hours for more information.
Welcome to Spaced Out, a podcast series about everything spacey. In this episode, we'll talk to author and cosmology science writer Eden White. We're covering a bit of background on Eden, then we'll move straight into the cosmology area and we'll talk about future directions of cosmology. Thanks for joining the podcast, Eden. Now, first impressions count, and I'm pretty curious about how you made the move from surgical implantation of medical devices to cosmology.
It's happened over 50 years. My whole career was in the surgical side. I joined a very good company back in the early days. I can say brand names, Johnson & Johnson Medical, but they were fantastic, gave an enormous amount of surgical training because they were in the business of suturing up patients, I suppose. And then they went on to stapling patients and doing all sorts of innovative ways of how to treat closing wounds of all types and all types of procedures. So the training went on for that, and then I joined several other companies. I've only actually worked for 4 big global organisations, and I suppose the pinnacle of my career was managing 15 countries throughout the Asia-Pacific region. I worked in Asia for 10 years, involved with implants for males and females. And in the end, I suppose I got sick of the travel, the time away from home, and that was my particular choice because, our kids were at school and then just about to go to university. So really it wasn't the right time to do this. So then I retired from being in the corporate world, I suppose you could say, the global corporate world, and started my own company with my wife on implants in Victoria. So 2 good things. It brought me home, to be back home, which I loved, and it gave me the opportunity to start studying cosmology, physics and particle physics.
Your interest in cosmology goes way back when you first started looking up into the sky and doing your astronomy, and that started when you were very young, I believe.
Yeah, we had telescopes when we were very young, but, all for the time of looking through telescopes from binoculars all the way through to 5-inch to 10-inch and then even bigger telescopes, it's still the wonder of how it all happened, and the beauty of the cosmos was always beckoning me in a way to understand why it was there, what causes it, when did it start, the epoch of time, I suppose you could say, and of course how it will end. So cosmology covers that whole linear line from the start of what we call the Big Bang, or what was called originally back in the 50s, all the way through to the end of the universe. It is slightly different to what you would call astrophysics, and of course the thing about cosmology is it covers all the disciplines. The main thing about cosmology is that it is all about the big picture of our universe. And that's something I've always, like many cosmologists, always thought about for many years, about the whole thing of how did all this happen. So that's really, it's a personal driving force, I suppose. So in the last 20 years, I've spent probably 2 to 4 hours a day studying the subject. And of course, I do all sorts of areas of talks and run cosmology groups in Melbourne and down this part of West Coast.
You actually are an author of a great newsletter that comes out on a weekly basis. Tell us a bit about that.
In the early days when we started an astronomy club here in West Coast, apart from writing a newsletter, I thought, really, no one writes anything about cosmology and puts it out simply so everyone can understand, or understand it at least enough. So I started off with a very simple sort of a page, just a 1-page issue going out on a monthly basis, and then people started to say, this is fantastic, can we get more? So it's developed from that point, and now it's called Cosmic Corner. It's on all the many, many various subjects of cosmology, right through from star formation through to really the ends of the universe, how the universe will end in various different forms. Now it goes out to, from an email point of view, around about 20,000 people worldwide. It goes internationally. These are people that subscribe to it. I don't charge any money for the subscription. Earlier this year, we decided to put it on Facebook, and since then it has gone wild.
Congratulations. That's a magnificent feat.
I think the circulation is something in the 45,000 amount worldwide. I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, I received an email, because it has my email address down the bottom if anyone wants to join or whatever. And this fellow from, you wouldn't believe, Abisko, which is one of the most northern towns in the Arctic Circle, the top of Sweden, said, "Hi, Eden. We're receiving your email, and I handed it out to all my friends at the pub, and it's taken us from a very boring life to a very interesting life. Thank you."
Oh, that's wonderful. Isn't that great?
And that's what keeps me going, is publishing Cosmic Corner. So it goes to a lot of astronomy clubs all over the world. Then singular people then take it and send it out to their friends, and it's a bit like the Rolling Stone gathers moss as it falls down the hill. So that's how it does. So that gives me a lot of great pleasure to keep on going and doing it. So I'm up to 130 issues now. Of course, they haven't been published all yet, but we're getting there.
To do all the work you're doing now and to actually have come this far in such a short time, you must have been really, really intensely studying cosmology.
Yeah, in the beginning, I was putting in, when I retired, of course, I was putting about 8 hours a day, and then I had to write my first book, which is a totally different subject to what cosmology is. And currently I'm rewriting my second manuscript for publication in the United States. But this has got me into the habit of not only studying but doing good research. And fortunately, my son has just become a PhD in Sweden. He lives in Sweden. He's got 2 children. And he allows me to get into some of the university sites, which is great. And that gives you a very good backstop with regards to the truth of what you're reading on the internet. On the internet, I would suggest that I reckon about 10% or more could be either wrong, out of date, or not right whatsoever. And, of course, when you're looking at the big picture of cosmology, you're looking at highly theoretical points of view. And some of the points of view are certainly backed up by extensive mathematics, which is something that I try to look for. And I'm no mathematician, but I try to look for those 2 elements of truth, and you follow those lines. So I think I still probably spend a good 4 hours a day studying cosmology. You have to keep up with it.
And that's how you get there. So isn't the importance of research terribly understated sometimes?
Absolutely. And my son hits me across the head all the time about research, but research that is quantitative and could be qualified, etc. But the thing about cosmology, different to what my son studied, he studies global warming up in the Arctic Circle. That's very scientific. But as I said, in cosmology, many of the universities and the authors sometimes throw out lines that are so way beyond the laws of physics. And I'll give you an example. There is a lot of study being done today on the end of the universe. In other words, how will the universe end? And, of course, there are some very good authors on this subject that have published about 5 different scenarios of how the universe will end. But along came, I think she was an Australian physicist. She works in, I think it's Princeton in the United States. Her name's Katie Mack. I think she's a PhD professor now, and she's come up with a theory of heat death, meaning that the universe itself, as it goes along through billions and billions of years, will run out of heat eventually. But when you know the laws of physics, or know many of them, it's sort of counterintuitive to a lot of the laws of things like thermodynamics and all that sort of thing. But when she explains it, it does sound realistic. And so sometimes we're caught between these not throwaway lines, or these are more sort of eccentric type of ideas, but they're backed up by some very good science.
Yes, because there's theories out there. Well, of course, the very well-known The Big Bang. Then there's the Big Freeze, the Big Rip, or perhaps even a Big Crunch. What do you say about those?
All of those ones, if you look at them all in detail, all of them have a very similar context. Big Rip is basically when it gets to the stage where it just virtually goes into an explosion and then goes into reverse. Now, when a universe goes into reverse, what we're saying is that there was a start of time. Yes, we all agree upon that. There's no disagreement with that. But if the universe goes to an end point, an end reference point, and then it starts to go back in time, that contradicts all the laws, the second law of thermodynamics and entropy. It contradicts the laws of the arrow of time and all those things that are rock-solid constants in our laws. So is it true or is it not? It's something that is well and truly yet to find out. And, of course, we're talking about maybe 100 billion years from now. So what I put this down to is I don't think a lot of people would like this, but a lot of universities out there that are very much involved with cosmology, one of which would be MIT in America, a couple in Australia, Europe, of course, have big ones. Because they're individuals and they're also trying to fight for funding, they're looking for every possibility to get funding and to come up with new or something different. The universities, of course, how they get funding is coming up with publishing really good papers in good articles and magazines that is talked about, discussed and then scientifically tested afterwards. But some of these things like what is dark matter, what is dark energy, we know really, Denise, we know very, very little about gravity. Can we ever finish the standard model of physics? Because gravity can't be included into that.
Some people are very unclear about what dark matter is and dark energy is, and they're totally different things.
They're totally different. Dark energy, which is around about 69.5% of our universe. You can't touch it, you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't taste it. They know it's there, but dark energy has this remarkable component of it being a repulsive force. Not being repulsive when you don't like someone, but being repulsive. And then dark matter is sort of the exact opposite. Dark matter is about 26% of the universe, and dark matter, and it is some type of matter or particle we don't know about of yet. It's still, hopefully in the future we'll know about what the particle is. But dark matter is an inclusive, attractive force. If dark matter wasn't there, Denise, all the planets, all the stars, all the galaxies and all the nebulas out there would be all bumping and crashing into each other. So what dark matter, including gravity, does is that it keeps everything in place in a happy way, if that's the best way. If we lose dark matter, we're in chaos.
Let's hope that never happens.
Yeah, and what's really fun about this and interesting to know is that these two, dark energy and dark matter, constitute around about 95.4% of the universe.
And that's huge.
Yeah, and we don't know much about it. And then, Denise, if you add in gravity, unfortunately, Einstein in 1915 said to Newton, sorry, you were wrong about gravity. He was right in a way, but he brought in, of course, space-time. Space-time, and if you can get your head around general relativity, which is a very, very difficult subject to do, but there are some tricks around how to get your head around it. Really, we don't know much about all those things. We know a little about it, and we know a little about their functionality within the universe. But from that point, getting back to the universities, that's what they're trying to study. What I have an issue with, and I've written in Cosmic Corner several times, is you could have, at any given time, 2, 3, 4, 5 universities around the world studying the same subject. Now, in science, that's great because one of them, hopefully in the end, might have someone like Einstein there to actually tell us what it is. But the fact is that a lot of money, a lot of funding has been spent greatly on one subject rather than many more. And that's the issue I have with funding of universities, because they're all trying to get the holy grail of science. And these are some of the holy grails we've been talking about this morning.
And speaking about Holy Grail, what about the James Webb Telescope? It's sort of turning the cosmology world on its head. And, a lot of eyes are starting to open about all sorts of different situations out there now. They never would have expected. What sort of things do you think we're going to be able to understand in the future about cosmology?
The James Webb Telescope is remarkable, and of course, indifferent to the Hubble telescope, which has I believe, many thousands of papers written about the science coming from the Hubble over 30 years, and I've got to say it was one of the most remarkable pieces of engineering the world has ever done. The James Webb Telescope sees in the different wavelengths and greater wavelengths than what we see through our eyes. Eventually, hoping in the future it will see more. Now, when we look at instruments like this, we talk about looking at what we call the observable universe. We've got the solar system, then we've got our Milky Way, and then billions of ways from there, we talk about the observable universe, and then the next distance from that is the universe itself. And we know we're in a flat universe. That's pretty well accepted these days. It's not like the saddle universe or the balloon universe that used to be thought several decades ago. We now live in a flat universe. It's been proven by enormous amount of calculations and mathematics. But these particular instruments, we can't forget the ones on the top of the mountains in Chile, the big, large, extra large telescopes that are about to go online or are online, the ones that are in the top of the mountain in Hawaii. These are enormous reflectors. And then we've got all the radio telescopes that were responsible for finding the black hole recently in 2017, which was a remarkable effort. What can we see from the future? The future, I think, will be in radio telescopes into deeper parts of space. The future will be optical telescopes like the James Webb Telescope that we'll see now. James Webb Telescope will probably get close to back to about 400,000 years post the Big Bang. The problem with that is that I don't think we'll be able to see any closer to the Big Bang, because when the Big Bang happened, it was so hot that it was like a plasma soup. Plasma is one of the four forms of matter, and it's very hot, and it created what they called a fog effect. You like when you look out your window in the morning, you see a fog. It looked like a pea soup, very illuminated, and you can't see through it. So NASA sent up 3 probes over 30 years. One was called the COBE, the next one was called the Wilson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, and then the next one was the Planck probe that started sending us incredible pictures back in 2012, actually verifying through looking at the universe that firstly, one, there was a Big Bang. We proved that from the sight of these photographs. And number two, that the plasma soup that we're talking about, the quiet plasma soup at the Big Bang, eventually, after trillions of degrees of heat, eventually cooled around about 400,000 years after the Big Bang. And what we know from all these incredible instruments that have proven the Big Bang is that around about 10,000 degrees, atoms can start to coalesce and form. And that's where hydrogen came from, helium, and all the other gases that were required to form stars. So light in the universe really didn't start for a few million years after the Big Bang itself, from stars forming. So in the future, I suppose, we will rely on extremely good photographs from the Webb. We might even have better telescopes going out. What we will see coming from the big telescopes is going to be, coming online, I'm sure, is going to be quite exceptional. But of course, when we look at those telescopes, they do have interference from our atmosphere. That's why we like telescopes outside the atmosphere and a million miles away, such as James Webb. And what we'll also see is the gravitational waves. Now, we haven't talked about that, but LIGO in the United States is, if you can picture this big L shape, suppose it's a kilometre long one way, and then it goes L-shaped the other way in an angle, 90-degree angle, that has lasers go down one and lasers go down the other. And when we get these gravitational waves, which come from things like exploding stars, we call them supernovas, or big bangs or anything like that, these waves come circumferentially all out over the universe, and they come to Earth and they vibrate one of those, the way I understand it, one of those lasers, which then connects to the other laser going along, which gives them an idea that there was a gravitational wave passing through. And gravitational waves can tell us a huge amount of what's going on in the universe. I think when we have the particle physicists and the theoretical physicists come up with ideas, we need more practical physicists to actually do it and demonstrate it and prove it. That's what we need at the moment, I believe.
Would you consider this to be one of the most profound cosmology questions of today for you?
No, I'm sorry to disagree with you. There's a whole huge list of profound cosmology questions that many people are working on and will take a great deal of time to answer. The most profound cosmology question would be why.
Of course, it's always about why.
That's right.
But why?
Why are we...
Oh, well, if we don't ask why, we never know the answer, do we?
That's right. So doing presentations, we have a lot of discussion groups. We come to the end of all the different things that we need to know in the big picture, but the next slide is why. Without getting into a religious component of this subject, because I'm often pushed into the corner about religion, I try to avoid it as much as I can because my study is science-based. At the end of the day, we've got to ask the question, there's a lot of work now being done about before the first second of time, before the Big Bang, what happened. And there's many people are postulating on a multiverse, in other words, multiple universes before us. Another one is a universe that was apparently next to us or there, and a part of it broke off, containing all the matter we needed to create our universe. There are others looking at black holes, and through a black hole, through the singularity of a black hole, and then it's like a portal. Does that portal connect to another universe or several parallel universes? There's lots of postulating going on about before the Big Bang, and there's a lot of research being done, not at the Big Bang, but even before now. So we're now diverting our attention to not the end of the universe, we're diverting our attention to where did matter come from? Did it come from other universes, or did matter occur at the time of inception or the beginning of time? And there are some very good physics answers to where matter came from at that particular point.
There's a lot of matter to talk about, and I'd love to have you back in the podcast series talking about some of those whys.
Yes, absolutely, and totally enjoy it. I'm sorry for my enthusiasm. It's a subject that I just get very excited about. So, again, thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Eden. We've just been talking to Eden White. He's author and cosmology science writer, and he's joined our podcast today on Spaced Out. Thanks for joining us on our first cosmology series, Spaced Out. Our second series will concentrate on gravitational waves, radio astronomy, and why planets are so different from each other in composition and atmospheric conditions. Join us again on Spaced Out. This is your host, Denise Kuchma.
I love the local news.
I love the music variety.
And all the local sport.
24 hours a day. It's all local. 88.6 Plenty Valley FM.